I'm from Hall County. I'm a poll worker. I'm a lead tabulator. I was supposed to count them. They wouldn't let me. They certified the election a week after the election. That was on Tuesday. On Wednesday, they let us count the presidential paper ballots. Before we opened them up, the Hall County election director, Lori Wirtz, told us how special our unsealing the seals would be, because they were sealed at the precinct, and we were going to unseal them and count them the day after they certified. They certified the election without looking, touching, unsealing our paper ballots.
In Henry County, we had quite a few duplicate voter registration numbers that citizens turned in to be cleaned up. You know, it'd be one person with 4 voter IDs. One person, same name, same everything, 4 IDs.
There's no evidence that we have what's legally called a numbered voters list. It's a number of actual people with their unique voter ID, their name, all of their information, and what precinct they voted in and what vote method they voted.
They have it, I think, 2 or 3 days after the election is when it is supposed to exist, but they won't share it. The real question is why.
Now, on 300, Sam knows 300, it says they got to be readable paper ballot. You got to be readable. I mean, that's just common sense. If you can't read your ballot like a QR code, it's ridiculous. I'm not going there. They didn't even look at our paper ballots. And same thing in 2020, 2022. All mine are in access storage up in Gainesville, an old building up there. And Lori Wirtz doesn't even know if they're still there. She thinks they're shredded already. This is ridiculous, the amount of corruption within this building here.
We've been working with President Trump's attorney, who is Peter Ticktin, that's Ticktin. And we've been looking at the voter integrity issue across the country. Now, Peter Ticktin actually went to high school with Donald Trump, military school, and they've known each other since 17 years old. And is Trump's personal attorney, who Trump is entrusted to do this voter security, voter integrity examination. And I've been working with him for the past few months, because I started out about last summer when Andrew Paquette got a paper where he had found algorithms in the New York State voter registration database. These algorithms permitted the creation of duplicate votes that were modified duplicates. They're fictitious, and it's like a cryptographic code is how this is done. So they have my name, DR.CORSI, and so I now end up with 4 records in the New York State database. They're all me, except that I have different ages and different places I lived, which make them independent, separate records. They look like individual people, so they will each get a voter ID. And then the scheme, you can hide them back in the database, so only the criminals know where they are, because they get algorithm identifier locations. So now you come into an election and you're the criminal inside, and this is in the Secretary of State's computer, where the voter files and voter records are kept. The official computer with all the voters in it has codes. And these codes permit the creation of these fictitious voters, these doubles, these duplicates that are modified. And when you need more votes, they can be found in the database. They can vote a mail-in ballot that is counted and certifiable, even though the person doesn't exist. So to give an example of how it was done, we strongly suspect that in 2020, in the battleground states, everybody stopped counting the ballots in election night. And so as a political scientist, my PhD is in political science from Harvard. I got it in 1972. I've been studying voting data for decades. What you find is that in all of these elections, so you stop the counting to say, well, we're going to need 30,000 votes to win. So no problem. The criminals go in and find 30,000 duplicates. They're modified. They're all fake. They say in the computer, the fraud's in the computer, this person requests a mail-in ballot. Well, it's not mailed to them. You don't mail a ballot to somebody who doesn't exist. What you do is the computer prints it out, and it's run through the tabulating machine. now counts, because the number requesting it, the number printed on the ballot match. And the state never goes to see if that's a real person. Okay, and so when the voting starts again, the candidate the criminals want to win come on top and stay on top. Now, because we found these, created a website which is called gods5stones.com after David and Goliath. That's G-O-D-S. There's no apostrophe. G-O-D-S. Spell out 5, F-I-V-E. And then stones is plural. Gods5stones.com. You can look it up right now on your computer. You can see it. Anybody finds it, let me know. And that has the reports of about 10 states where we found these algorithms. I think they're in every single state. I've not looked yet at a state that they aren't there. So Georgia's not alone. But see, because we found these in really last year, 2023, started publicizing them, criminals knew we were onto their game. So the algorithms were not used in the presidential election in 2024. Georgia, as you saw, quit counting on election night and voted and called in the election for President Trump. That's not what Georgia did in 2020. The difference was we would have caught them this time because we had trained and alerted poll watchers for how the scheme looks. Suddenly, large groups of mail-in ballots appear, or they're requested. If you start checking who these mail-in ballots are, you find if you can cancel some of them, the people don't exist. Just as we heard, the people don't exist. Okay, so Georgia has over the voter file in the Secretary of State's office about a little over 7 million voters in Georgia. 1 million of the records are duplicates. 1 million. 1 out of every 7 records in your voter rolls are illegal. Okay, now, I don't have to prove that any election was stolen because it's a crime. HAVA says every voter needs to have 1 record. You can't make 4 of me with 4 different records that are really me. That's a crime. Okay, and this has got to be stopped. Now, I'm here because President Trump, Peter Tickton and I intend to win the cases in Florida. The case involves, I can send you, there's been a paper written on it, American Thinker recently. It's District 14, Rocky Rockford election. He was contesting a seat that was held by a Democrat, I believe, a woman named Castor. Well, in September, about 2 months before the election, 159,000 mail-in ballots were requested in this district, Pinellas County, which was Tampa and St. Petersburg. Okay, now in Florida, if you want to request for a mail-in ballot, you got to put either your driver's license, the last 4 digits of your social security number. If you don't do that, it's called a no request because you don't have that information. Virtually every one of those 159,000 people got a mail-in ballot, even though they were illegal. When they came in, they were submitted to the counties and voted. Now that's going to be for us a slam dunk because that violates Florida law. Then Florida has about 1 of every 9 records is a duplicate. And they've got algorithms in their database. Okay, so this case has been filed in the 14th District State Court in Florida. We have a case going on in Tallahassee, capital Florida, saying that the Florida state voter roll is corrupted beyond repair. And we have filed with the House of Representatives, the committee that seats representatives, and they are seriously examining whether the existing seated congresswoman got the seat illegally. Okay, now when we get one of these courts to make a decision like this, and we're not challenging prior elections, we're challenging that the database is inherently corrupt. In other words, let's say you're playing cards at a casino, you're playing 21, you find out that the casino is using marked cards. That casino can't prove you lost a hand. Well, so if you're running for election in a state where 1 of every 7 voters in the voter roll is not existing as a person. The state of Georgia can't prove anybody lost an election. There'd be no way to do it. And then we can show things like, in the state of Georgia, we found 3,000 people voted early. Some in person, some with mail-in ballots.
You're talking 24.
24, this current election. A few weeks later, we looked in the database. The work here was done by Kim Brooks of the Georgian Nerds. And she looked back in the database. A few weeks later, those names were no longer in the database of the registry of the Secretary of State. They're gone. So they put them in, voted them, and took them out, disappeared them.
But the votes stayed.
But the votes stayed. Okay, they took 30,000 voters in Georgia that had been purged. In other words, they would have been removed from the database and marked inactive. They were remarked active and voted and counted. Then they could be remarked not active any longer. Found votes where people had moved out of state. And they voted the original Georgia registration, which was no longer in effect because the person moved. Then they took that record out of the database, made a duplicate of it, put the duplicate in the database, voted it, and then removed the duplicate and put back the original. So we can actually tie the use of these duplicate modified votes to votes that were cast. And if we had subpoena power, we could come in here and tell you which of the elections were won by algorithms and which of the elections were won by voters. Now, some of these algorithms have been in state databases since 2004, others in 2007. So we may not ever be able to know how many people in the U.S. House of Representatives or Senate were voted by algorithms rather than by voters. And by the way, even though Georgia did not use the algorithms in the presidential election, they were used in the down ballot elections.
Yep.
So you could steal House seats, Senate seats in the
County
U.S.
seats.
Congress, seats in the legislature, seats all over the state. Amendments you didn't like, you could steal virtually anything on the ballot. And the criminals, okay, now who are the criminals? Well, truth is I don't know. But whoever got the passwords and hacked into the computer in the Secretary of State's office, put the algorithms there and is controlling it to vote. They're the ones who are controlling your elections. Now it could be the CIA, could be foreign governments, could be Iran wants to hack our elections, Russia, China. I don't know, but we're going to find out. Now, President Trump's strategy is once we begin to win some of these court cases on cases like Florida that we can find out, we can have a national security executive order from the White House. And President Trump seems to be pretty good at starting a stack of those things. He doesn't seem to mind doing it. And he can say it's a national security emergency. And every state is mandated to throw away their voter registration rolls and do it all over again. And this time, do it where you know who the person is. Make them come in and show who they are. Want to do voter IDs? That's a good idea too. But at least you have to have people to come in and prove who they are and have a right to vote. And then you go to paper ballots, and not just paper ballots, but hand-signed paper ballots that are hand-counted. We'll get rid of the machines altogether. And now we're on the road to knowing who votes and who doesn't vote and whether they have a right to vote and it's counted correctly. Okay, now, that may not be a perfect system, but it's where the president's headed and it's a lot better than we've got right now. Okay, and as this develops, it's not a Republican or Democratic issue. My 501c3 is a nonprofit organization. I want there to be voter integrity. I want your votes to count. Who you vote for is up to you. That's what America's all about. I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'm telling you that no Somebody who doesn't exist can't make your vote worthless.
Right.
Because some criminal figured out a clever way to game the system. Okay, and that's what we gotta put an end to. Now, I can guarantee you that I'm the front man. I'm just here delivering the message. And I've been doing this, my job here is really just to tell the truth as much as I can. So it's what I did creating Gods5Stones.com, 501c3. We're continuing to raise money. We're gonna continue to I'm working with Peter Tickton closely, talking to him almost every day. Working with Andrew Paquette, who's a computer genius, Dr. Paquette, who figured this out. Dr. Paquette isn't here because we spoke to you in 10 minutes, you'd all be lost. It's a brilliant thing that he figured out. And I can show it to you, but the math is very complicated. The cryptographers know it's there, and I've had it validated over and over and over again. It's legit. It's like you might not like geography, you know, it might not, but you can't say the Pythagorean theorem is incorrect. It works. When you see these codes, they work. They're there. You see the duplicate votes, you can't deny them. How'd they get there? Well, this is how they got there. So findings these gentlemen have found, we can show you some of how it was done. I completely support their findings. I think they've done legitimate work, and what they found is validated and consistent with what we found. And I support their efforts. I think we're going to find out a lot of things here, a lot of lies that have been told, and I can guarantee you that I'll be followed by the Department of Justice that will have subpoena power. And we'll be finding out who in Georgia did what. I'm not accusing anybody of anything. As far as I know, everybody here has been honest and done their job. And if that's not the case, I suspect it'll be found out by others who have law enforcement authority, which I do not have. So I'm not making any accusations except to tell you this is the problem, and this is what I think is coming. And everything I said has been, and I can tell you for a fact that Donald Trump is determined to prove the 2020 election was stolen. And this is how he started.
All right, with that, any questions from the legislators?
Sure.
If I could.
Go ahead, Sam.
Senator. Dr. Corsi, thank you. So is it possible, so when you're saying these people, these 30,000, these are people that don't exist?
Well, the 30,000 may have once existed, okay, because purge voters tend to be people who are inactive. I mean, you've got rules in the state. If somebody hasn't voted in a period of time and they haven't contacted the person for a period of time, they're supposed to be removed from the database. They may have moved out of state, they may have died. They were in the database of voters, they had registration numbers, and now they're inactive. And the trick there is to just make them active again for a period of time and vote them and then remove them.
So is it possible to take one of these 30,000 and vote them in person on election day?
Yes.
But they never showed up
They
because
never-
they're
well,
dead or they weren't here?
Most likely, what they do is the mail-in ballots. That's the easiest, that's what's been used the most. That's what we saw in 2020. Now, you could do other things with it. Yeah, you could make it look like they voted in person. But that's not the way it's typically done. It's done mostly with figuring out how many more you need or else you're going to lose. And then in a rush job producing that number. So you haven't done it as it's gone along.
All right, and then lastly, can you back up what you're saying? You can prove it.
Oh yeah, if you want, I could print out a list for Georgia today of the 1 million duplicate voters. Here's the names. We have the
Boy, but I'd love
database.
to have a copy of that as a CSD.
Well, you can have it. What works for you can have
And
it.
in Henry County, we had quite a few duplicate voter registration numbers that citizens turned in to be cleaned up. You know, it'd be one person with 4 voter IDs. One person, same name, same everything, 4 IDs. So they were challenging those. I'd have to find out, you know, what the results were. But we saw it in my county. So.
Any other questions?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Julie Adams. I'm on the Fulton County Board of Elections. And one of the things, I know that that we have a serious issue with the voter rolls, and we do not accept challenges. We haven't since I've been on the board. We have a policy that you can't even challenge someone that's on the inactive list, period. And a lot of the metro counties have that. You cannot challenge. And the board came up with their guidelines on accepting citizen challenges. And of course, it's 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans. So they voted for that. But I know that there's a problem, but one of the other things that just strikes me listening to this, and I know elections inside and out, but in Fulton County and many other counties, and I believe in the whole state, I would love our legislators to ask for this. There's no evidence that we have what's legally called a numbered voters list. It's the number of actual people with their unique voter ID, their name, all of their information, and what precinct they voted in and what vote method they voted. And on the Board of Elections in Fulton, I've been asking for this for more than a year. I've actually am in litigation to try to get this. And I believe that even though we have it in our law that we're supposed to have a numbered voters list, and the law says in a couple of different places that I, as a superintendent on the Board of Elections, I'm supposed to have the numbered list of voters and compare it to the cast votes per precinct per vote method. But I would challenge these legislators to ask the Secretary of State for a numbered list of voters for the state and see if you guys can get that, because I have no evidence that anyone can get it. I know the State Elections Board has tried to get it before, and they have been denied it.
And I've had an open record request for it since before November. And they said I would have it February 13th is the date they gave me. Still don't have it. Would be nice. By law, they're supposed to give it. They have it, I think, 2 or 3 days after the election is when it is supposed to exist, but they won't share it. The real question is why.
All right, any other questions? You got a question?
I do. In January, we welcomed the legislators back from their winter break, and we had this information for them. And Dr. Jan's very well aware of this. I've been keeping in touch with her. It's a tabulator tape that says, "We, the undersigned election officials, hereby certify that the above election was held in accordance with the Local Authority Election Act." You Google Local Authority Election Act, and it says it's from Alberta, Canada. How can this be? I'm from Hall County. I'm a poll worker. I'm a lead tabulator. I was supposed to count them. They wouldn't let me. They certified the election a week after the election. That was on Tuesday. On Wednesday, they let us count the presidential paper ballots. Before we opened them up, the Hall County election director, Lori Wirtz, told us how special our unsealing the seals would be, because they were sealed at the precinct, and we were going to unseal them and count them the day after they certified. They certified the election without looking, touching, unsealing our paper ballots. Now, on 300, Sam knows 300, it says they got to be readable paper ballot. You got to be readable. I mean, that's just common sense. If you can't read your ballot like a QR code, it's ridiculous. I'm not going there. They didn't even look at our paper ballots. The same thing in 2020, 2022. All mine are in access storage up in Gainesville, an old building up there. And Lori Wirtz doesn't even know if they're still there. She thinks they're shredded already. This is ridiculous, the amount of corruption within this building here.
For more content like this, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And if you want to know when we're going live, make sure you follow us on X, Rumble, Facebook, and YouTube, and don't forget to hit the notifications button. If you would like to make a contribution to our efforts here, we'll have the link in the description.